very good morning to everybody and welcome back to another interview from the Survive to Thrive webinar series. It's lovely to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by another very special guest. I'd like to welcome Olivia Egerton to the virtual lockdown couch, which we've been using for about the past 4 months now. And now Olivia's built a hugely distinguished career, driven by the deep belief that there's potential lurking just below the sector inside our primary industries to unleash value that's yet untapped. Throughout her career, she's put that belief to really hard work, bringing the sector together inside the extraordinary Tohono movement and also inside New Zealand Merino. And I'm really pleased to announce that Olivia is joining us now in a virtual desk alongside the Katabolt team. So Olivia Egerton, champion for the New Zealand sector, thank you for joining us today. It's absolutely lovely to have you with us. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. And thank you for having me, Andy.
You're very welcome. Now, today we're going to focus on the primary sector because throughout the conversations that we've been having inside this series, we've heard time and time again that the place where the value for a post-COVID world is sitting is inside primary. So it's like part of your personal philosophy around this is actually helping people to take action. So it's very easy for all of us, especially when we're currently under conditions of lockdown here in Auckland, to be able to sit and make plans in isolation, a long way away from the markets anywhere in the world. But without implementation, without taking that ambition and actually turning it into action, and nothing happens. So in many ways, lots of parts of this sector is, there's a long legacy of things that you might have done, but not a lot that we did do. So you drive a concept called Iti Nui really centrally in the way that you think and the way that you create action inside the space. Can you help me understand a little bit more about this concept and why it's so singularly powerful in helping organizations in primary to take action to be able to grow?
Well, I guess, as a country, a little island at the bottom of the world, which, is quite a good thing right now, but often previously has been seen as, we're a long way from some of our key markets. The idea of Iti Nui is that you're acting both big and small. And at the same time, small things can be very precious but they also, as we see today, can aggregate something very big and global.
Well, a very good morning to everybody and welcome back to another interview from the Survive to Thrive webinar series. It's lovely to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by another very special guest. I'd like to welcome Olivia Egerton to the virtual lockdown couch, which we've been using for about the past 4 months now. And now Olivia's built a hugely distinguished career, driven by the deep belief that there's potential lurking just below the sector inside our primary industries to unleash value that's yet untapped. Throughout her career, she's put that belief to really hard work, bringing the sector together inside the extraordinary Tohono movement and also inside New Zealand Merino. And I'm really pleased to announce that Olivia is joining us now in a virtual desk alongside the Katabolt team. So Olivia Egerton, champion for the New Zealand sector, thank you for joining us today. It's absolutely lovely to have you with us. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. And thank you for having me, Andy.
You're very welcome. Now, today we're going to focus on the primary sector because throughout the conversations that we've been having inside this series, we've heard time and time again that the place where the value for a post-COVID world is sitting is inside primary. So it's like part of your personal philosophy around this is actually helping people to take action. So it's very easy for all of us, especially when we're currently under conditions of lockdown here in Auckland, to be able to sit and make plans in isolation, a long way away from the markets anywhere in the world. But without implementation, without taking that ambition and actually turning it into action, and nothing happens. So in many ways, lots of parts of this sector is, there's a long legacy of things that you might have done, but not a lot that we did do. So you drive a concept called Iti Nui really centrally in the way that you think and the way that you create action inside the space. Can you help me understand a little bit more about this concept and why it's so singularly powerful in helping organizations in primary to take action to be able to grow?
Well, I guess, as a country, a little island at the bottom of the world, which, is quite a good thing right now, but often previously has been seen as, we're a long way from some of our key markets. The idea of Itanui is that you're acting both big and small. And at the same time, small things can be very precious but they also, as we see today, can aggregate something very big and global. So I guess it's a philosophy that's relevant to life on many levels. Personally, you can make a big difference in your communities, in your business, and in turn, that impacts organisations and nations, as we know, New Zealand Inc. itself. But it was coined at one of the first boot camps up at Stanford, which was, how do we build a better Aotearoa? And sometimes it seems just all too hard. But the thing, I guess, that it really drives us to do is all those little steps that you do each day, really having that meeting that and really interrogates your value chain and says, where are we actually missing out on value, to understanding, okay, that's where it is, and creating a strategic project that explores how you could build value into that space. Those small actions that you take can have big ramifications of where you're going to be in the next 12 to 24 months. That call into someone to say, actually, our current market has dried up. They've closed the doors. They don't need any of this product. And now we have a lot of product that needs to go somewhere. Help me understand what market potential I have. That call can have great ramifications for looking into the future and saying, well, we never thought we would go into this new market, but actually we have the potential to build a long-term, multi-year partnership with someone we didn't think we could. So I guess it's looking at this current crisis in the pandemic that's sweeping the world and saying, what are the opportunities for us as a primary sector? We have a great level of sophistication. I mean, you can always get more sophisticated, but we have a lot of people who know a lot deeply about various areas of growing, harvesting, what our land and our resources can do. And it's about, how do we connect into markets where their need is great. I mean, as you see people rushing off to the supermarket yesterday in Auckland, you think, we live in a complete food bowl here in New Zealand. As long as a truck can go up the main line or something can go onto a train, we have food, which many people across the world do not. And they're running on 24-hour timeframes as to when they might run out, or that there won't be anything to go back on the shelf. So I think it's about understanding that we have the sophistication, we have deep pockets of knowledge, but actually we just need to get stuff done. And we actually need to be brave and not be so shy about the sweetness of who we are and what we do, and actually get out there and put one foot in front of the other to explore where the opportunity is, and ask the question to someone who's qualified to answer it, and say, what can I do, where can I go, how can you help me to get value for what I'm doing, because right now we are sitting in a place where we do have that opportunity and time to ask the question and focus on what we might be able to do differently.
So this toughness that's coming through, I think, is probably long. It's long overdue, the focus on actually getting things done. And one of the questions that I know is being asked in many corners of the sector right now is the role of technology. And this is, from a personal point of view, I'm fascinated by this, because the emerging tech sector in New Zealand is absolutely amazing, and the potential of merging that with the primary sector, it's like takes us into a place of unknown value, in particularly around traceability and the role of blockchain, etc., and all of this. What's your take on the speed of adoption of technology inside the sector at the moment? Are there any blind spots that we have, or any blockages that we have to get around? And how optimistic are you about our ability to merge these two behemoths of our economy?
Well, I think the challenge was, that in New Zealand we have been slow to adopt technology, as where there are huge gains to be made from some of the sensor technology, some of the robotics, and often there have been some very quiet leaders who have just gone away and done it in New Zealand. So we're seeing some incredible stories come off. The Kiwi ingenuity and innovation continues to create the new versions of the Hamilton jet, the new versions of the refrigeration, all of that type of thing. I guess, when they say the smallest component of a computer, can influence the greatest magic and opportunity, you're seeing people, on farm, whether that be sea or land, actually adopt technology that can give them, deeper measurements into what they're doing, how they're doing it, and where the opportunity is. And those who have measured data for a long time, which many of our really sophisticated farming operations have been doing, are now seeing trends that they can capitalize on, what they're providing their stock, when they're providing their stock, what the opportunities are. So the technology sector here in New Zealand is an incredibly exciting place. It's growing rapidly and quite quietly in the background, but the opportunity for us to apply and again test and prototype here in our own backyard is incredible.
And that lesson keeps coming to the fore, though, doesn't it? It's the fact to try it, test it, experiment it, do it here. Because here you can control it, here you can do it fast, you can do things at pace, you can get things done. So I don't expect to do this in markets. Is this a radical shift from where the sector's been thinking in the past?
Well, I think it's something that, when I started the journey with Te Hono, we really embraced something called design thinking, which is that human-centered approach to innovation. And as soon as you start thinking in that way, it becomes very simple, really, is that you can think of something that's a great idea, but it's sort of percolated, think about it for a little bit and then get some empathy around and some insight around as to, does it land with people? Does it not land with people? Is there an opportunity? And then from there, really hone in and define, what the opportunity could be. How might we do this, that, or the other thing? And then, really build it with a broad range of people who understand what you're trying to do deeply, people who yesterday wouldn't have known what you were talking about. And then the idea to sort of keeping on having the confidence to rapidly do something, test it, do something, and actually refine it. I guess not holding too close to what your original idea was is a huge opportunity for New Zealanders who think the way we do.
Now, for the expert community, that is the audience for this series, we often tend to overgeneralize about the primary industries. We see it as a single block, and albeit a block at the moment that we believe is doing particularly well. But the reality behind this is that there's certain elements of the primary sector, certain segments in there that are standout for their performance at the present moments. It's like, should our attention when we're looking for inspiration and also points of connection and collaboration for our businesses, should our connection at the present moment inside primary be focused on primary on the land or primary on the sea?
I guess where we're seeing is that the rise of this sort of homebody economy overseas has basically allowed New Zealand exporters of primary products, that in particular being proteins, able to enter into new retail markets where predominantly they might have been into food service. And so the great challenge to food service, being a lot of the world is in lockdown or voluntary lockdown, is that actually they've had to think of new ways of selling product, which in turn has put New Zealand that is at the moment operating in a perception overseas of being a very safe and secure to COVID-19 in a place where we are seen as being a safe and secure product to be consumed. The opportunity here in New Zealand has been that, given COVID has meant that a lot of our exporters aren't burning shoe leather in the market, as they say, it's allowed people to actually look into the business and focus on where the opportunities are, where there might have been options for ready-to-eat, high-protein meals, going into a particular direction. They've been able to say, actually, what could that look like if we tried and tested that in the New Zealand market? We evolved it, prototyped it, and then took it into other markets. The other interesting area has been that as people have had time to spend quality time at home, they've looked at what they consume and how they consume it. And one thing that's been sort of talked about for a long time is plant proteins and the opportunity for New Zealand there. Given that we are really a food bowl of a number of different climates across a very small country, we have a large plant register, which places us perfectly to be able to explore an opportunity where we actually can deliver high quality premium protein, both in the sort of meat sector, but also in the plant protein space. This has led people to actually order that plant-based mince or the bacon-free bacon, or and test it within New Zealand. So you're seeing a change actually in what we eat, given that we've had time to actually focus on our health and well-being as we are in lockdown.
This is fascinating. I just want to spend a little bit of time and just unpick what you said there, because there's quite a lot to it. In the first instance, what you're suggesting here is that the immediate value opportunity for the primary sector is based upon people's need to have security of product, security of nutrition, security of quality on top of that. Do you think this trend is actually peaked out? I mean, given the fact that you have countries under extreme stress at the present moment, is it possible for this trend to go even higher, or are we actually at, have we taken that value as high as it can possibly go?
I think actually we are sitting on an opportunity to explore more value, and really, while the exporters are largely landlocked at home, and the ability to look deeply into their business and really scrutinise what is your value proposition, scrutinise your value chain, and where are the opportunities that you could actually be building value. There actually is an opportunity to grow more value by reflecting inwardly on the business at a time when you can't focus with your customers in your markets, as deeply, but also find new ways of articulating what you do and how you do it.
So, again, the second strive to your previous answer was around the utilisation of New Zealand as being the perfect sandpit for testing in. So rather than expecting you to be able to undertake market testing in other countries, to actually do your market testing at home and prove that you're moving into a higher value space before you go and implement any more costly moves to go overseas and to open a bigger export market.
Yes, I think we've seen in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, New Zealanders have really embraced a deep foodie culture. And really, as you travel domestically around New Zealand, you can eat very, very well in a lot of places. In fact, a lot of people travel now in New Zealand to a destination food spot, which shows that our interest in food is actually creating a more sophisticated palate, but also a broader range of thinking around what we could eat, how we could consume, which is actually helping evolve products and product opportunities for exporters if they choose to explore in the domestic market, which is a very small market for most exporters, and then take that to play in market and test the different palates, flavor profiles, and things like that.
Right now, what I'd love to unpack more is that behind this route to greater value for the primary industry, there is a path that actually starts in a very personal place. It starts with ambition, because we have to have the ambition to do something different. Because what you've been describing before is essentially a change management process, and we all know from our lives and from our businesses just how enormously difficult change management is. But what are we doing as a country to cultivate the ambition, to cultivate the mindset, to enable us to make the commitments and to do things differently for ourselves and for future generations? Where is this growth of that mindset that we need to be able to move our businesses towards high value growth?
Well, I guess a deep pocket of that mindset began almost 8 years ago when John Brackenridge, who is the chief executive of the New Zealand Merino Company, created what was the New Zealand Primary Sector Boot Camp, but taking 24 of the largest value focused companies up to Stanford University to explore actually what were the traits, I guess, of high value enterprises, and how were people making step changes to change towards that high value economy. And what started there was the Te Hono movement, which now has about 260 influential leaders involved that represent about 80% of the primary sector. And what that organisation has done, and the cohort as they call it, has really done a lot of deep realigning and built a strong foundation of trust, respect and knowledge that has evolved a bit of a DNA, I guess, of high value enterprises. And given that none of this happens by chance, in fact, they often say that leadership is hard, and so it requires a bit of leaning in. They have sort of discovered that there are a few features of high value enterprises that are critical to its success. And largely it stems from, actually having some pivotal leaders who are prepared to ask the hard questions and actually prepared to start the almost difficult task of transformation, which in a sector which is as old as the primary sector, there has been lamb going offshore for a very long time now. It's actually asking, how might we do things differently? Where are we losing value for every dollar that's leaving the farm? Why is this, why is there the opportunity to not harness the value in between the farm gate and the consumer? So it takes the leaders, it takes ambition and attitude, it takes a strategic anchor or focus as to actually what are you trying to achieve and how are you trying to achieve it within a business as usual company. It takes investment, which is of course in New Zealand we often can innovate and do things on the fly very cheaply, but actually sometimes you really do need to allocate resource and investment into being able to make that step forward. It takes getting to know your customers. We've been very good at creating incredible products, whether that be consumable products or services, and often we just expect that they're going to take off and fly in these great big places. I mean, if you think of America, it really is 52 countries within one. Some would say maybe sometimes more, but often your product or service is competing against a number of others that might not be as good, but might be very, very good at telling their story. And that is, as New Zealanders, often we don't like to sing of our own sweetness and don't like to share, what we're really good at. So it's about how do we do that, but how do we also spend a bit of time listening to actually the customers in the market and how we might be able to tailor our, the benefits of our products to actually what their needs are, as opposed to assuming that they're all on a similar journey to us here in New Zealand. It takes some capability of great people, a certain amount of discipline to hold true to your focus, and also connecting and collaborating. For a long time, I think within the New Zealand primary sector, companies have been largely siloed, and what Te Hono did at the very start was really bring together all of those silos and start having conversations. Many companies are having the same issues and trying to, work around them as a singular company, whether of the same type or niche, or whether it be a number who are all trying to go into the same place. And so the value has been actually having the conversations that allow you to either work powerfully as a group to harness that.
Do you think that our lack of collaboration inside the sector is actually a little bit inside our commercial DNA in this country? That lack of collaboration is currently holding us back in primary?
I think probably less so, but it definitely should be front and centre, is how are we collaborating to help each other? A long time ago, someone explained to me, we leave thinking we've done a huge thing by sending a couple of 40-foot containers offshore, but actually that arrives in the market and, on a container wharf of hundreds or thousands of containers, they really are just nothing. So it's how do we actually collaborate together to be a bigger presence when you get into a market.
Okay, so now we're talking about a team of 5 million or a team of 6 million, as we are. We take Kiwis from across the world. So what lessons have you learned in the past couple of years about the way that cross-sector collaboration and international collaboration can actually help you get clearer and further faster?
Well, I think first of all, you're sharing resource. The resource is always hard in New Zealand. And actually it takes a lot. It does often take a lot of resource to be able to get into the markets and places and in front of the people you need to see. So if you actually collaborate, the opportunity is that you can one person can open the door, the others can come in behind, but actually you have, by collectively 5 or 6 of you joining together, you've been able to open that door with a certain level of sophistication, but also it hasn't bled you completely dry in terms of your whole company strategy. I think the other opportunity is that it by sharing and understanding particular consumers and their needs, you also understand where the opportunity is for companies to grow certain products, to put certain products together. Wine and oysters go very well. They can take some shelf or retail space together. You get this beautiful synergies of products and how they sit together.
It's a huge stretch, though, isn't it? Of stretch of capability and capacity inside the primary sector. Because what we're asking the sector to do now is to be completely cognizant of the end user right into market and what they need. It's like, what do we have at our disposal at an economic level, at a practical level here, to be able to bring the knowledge of these things together in a way that's doable? Because on one hand, we say act and act fast, which of course is the right thing to do, and on the other hand, we go and know everything you can possibly know. So there's an inherent tension in having to know everything and having to act fast. What is it that we have at our disposal in the structure that's brought by, say, NZTE or other government's infrastructure here that can help make this so much more accessible and such a less daunting task than it feels at the present moment?
Well, I think really there's huge opportunity at the touch of your fingertips. A lot of exporters have really great support from their customer managers at NZTE. And right now there's a number of companies who have rapidly innovated to provide products that actually are quick triages for businesses. And I think this is where people need to take that opportunity to really lean on, your customer managers, but lean on your fingertips and really see what the opportunities are for your business. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to put all the investment in straight off. You can actually do some quick unpacking of where you are and where your opportunities are quite quickly in this current environment. Okay,
so what I'm from here again, it's like your message is coming through loud and clear. It's actually act and act now. There is in a condition where your market is moving at this pace, and we're asking the primary industry to be market aligned, not culture aligned, but market aligned. Then you have no choice but to act fast. Is that fair to say?
It is, and I think there's been often so much sophistication in the development of their own supply chains that actually we lose sight of the person we're actually designing, creating, growing for. And really that person needs to come right to the heart of the whiteboard or the Excel spreadsheet and say, what is this person actually wanting? When we have got this sort of home body movement growing, a few years ago we would have said, let's focus on the LOHAs, the lifestyles of health and sustainability. But that's evolving again. And so you're seeing this massive trend where basically people have been in lockdown, they've been totally empowered to do everything online. How can we as New Zealand primary sector, but also exporters, capitalise on that opportunity? Especially when, e-commerce, the opportunity is endless if you have really put some effort into understanding what your customer's trying to get.
Yeah, the opportunity is endless, but the challenge of bringing customer view with enough certainty into the center of your business, again, going back to the change management part from before, is incredibly complicated and quite challenging. Yeah. given how fast-paced this change is in the world around us, in terms of our partners in market and consumer needs and consumer trends, so much change has been accelerated into such a short period of time. It's quite extraordinary. What points of distinct optimism do you have that we can sustain this change inside our primary sector, and that we can become the foundation of our economy long into the future?
Well, I think the key thing is that food is becoming a scarce resource, and here in New Zealand, we literally are a country of of growing incredible and quality, high nutrient food, and so therefore we just need to make sure that we are positioning ourselves to take that opportunity where there's scarcity and in I guess a huge crisis. Why not understand how we can actually deliver the nutrients to the world? How do we take our food basket or our kete and support countries across the globe?
And I think everybody listening to this today will support that ambition, because that's the level of thinking, the level of motivation that we need to be able to drive ourselves, our sector, and our economy forward. Olivia, it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you today. Thank you so much for your insights and your perspective on the challenges ahead for the sector, and for you and your whānau and everyone else down there in Christchurch. All the very best for everybody watching. Thank you again for joining us. Please watch out for another interview being released next week. We look forward to seeing you all then. Take care.
Thanks, Andy.